Welcome into another episode of Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. The Facebook page is Clocker Sports, website clockersports.com, the email address clockersports@gmail.com. This episode, we're going to talk about a few things, man. The league is talking about a tentative return, the NBA that is. The NFL is talking as if they're going to proceed as normal, and you got a few players chirping about what went right for them this season, what went wrong for them this season, and who they think is ranking where. And this is across the NFL and the NBA. So we're going to start off talking about that return that I was talking about. The NBA has been in preliminary talks with Disney World about a return and having an isolated kind of area there at the resort for the league to come back. And while they have had those talks, the return date is uncertain. Right now they're talking about coming back to return to play, quote unquote, in June, and then having games actually taking place before the end of July. That would obviously run the season up with the next year and the draft and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing is getting people actually onto the field or onto the court. And right now they just can't figure out exactly how to do it. Are they bringing everybody back? Do they? How much of a training camp are they giving you? If they bring everybody back, are they giving them all a chance to make the playoffs? How do you format the playoffs? Do you just do the traditional style? So there's so much up in the air that my big concern now is do they have enough time to figure out all this stuff? Now they can, obviously. Money will be the big driving factor behind all this. Trying to give the satisfy, I believe it was a 77 game TV contract. So I will see them getting that done more than anything, I see that being the driving factor more than anything. But you do wonder how much time they need to implement or to finally decide on a plan, and then how long do they need to actually implement said plan. Now, honestly, I think once they decide on something, they can get it done pretty quickly. But you're definitely seeing a lot of extra talking points coming up in this because there's just so many different aspects of it that you got to examine. So it's not really surprising, but it definitely is a wrench in the optimism that was growing as the clear push for sports to return for multiple reasons, mainly financial. But the clear push to return all major sports has been obvious, and just hearing that the dates, or hearing all these extra arguments coming out and the date being so uncertain, is kind of a monkey wrench, or a wrench in the works, trying to get things back to normal in the sports world. Now, in the NBA, even more specifically, Spencer Dinwiddie has been in the news a lot, actually. He was talking about Michael Jordan being average because he has similar athletic ability. It wasn't really as close as he tried to make it seem, and I actually laugh because every time somebody tries to compare to something physical with Michael Jordan, I just say, well, you clearly don't understand, so there's not really a point anymore to arguing it. But he made this point today, talking about his teammate Kevin Durant, who obviously we know missed last year with the Achilles. But if they do return to play, there's a chance that he can come back and play. So that's an extra incentive for I think some of the fans to want to see the league return, because it could just be the full force of 2021 only in 2020 with big implications. He said that at 80%, Kevin Durant is Dirk Nowitzki. At 100%, he's the best scorer of all time. And anywhere in between, he's still a top 3 small forward in the league. I don't see a world where he's not one of the elite players in the NBA when he comes back. I actually said this not that long ago where I agree. At worst, he's going to be a spot-up shooter, but like a deadly accurate spot-up shooter, right? If you're looking at him losing some lateral movement, he was never a player whose game was built off explosiveness or speed or anything like that, so that's not the problem. But you do worry about lateral movement, somebody with the length that he has, with the slender build and things of that nature. So I have to agree here. At 80%, he's Dirk. He's Dirk with a handle, fully healthy, and that's ridiculous to even think about. But this one, I'm fully on board with. Dinwiddie also said that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the GOAT. And that's an argument that's been coming about a lot more lately. Looking at some of the accomplishments of Kareem, I'll never. That's the one that I won't argue with as vocally. Whatever. That's cool. I don't agree, but that's fine. Just picking on Spence at this point. But yeah, the KD one, that's a pretty good description. 80% is Dirk, because I'm assuming he's just saying that 20% is his mobility. So moving on, other players doing a lot of talking. Larry Markin, Chicago Bulls forward, was on a a Finnish podcast, and I cannot pronounce that, so I don't want to mess it up, but I believe it's like Erliker. I wrote about it for Pippen Ain't Easy, and his comments actually pointed to the big issue that I've been talking about with Boylen for a while, and I think I brought it up mostly in the beginning. It kind of just wore off because he just kept giving you the same kind of coach speak, but that was one of the things too. I digress. Lowry kind of shined the light on exactly what went wrong there, and he talked about how a lot of Boylen's methods were like kind of really old school things. He put in a punch clock and had everybody have their own individual cars, and it was kind of how you would imagine it going, the veterans having young guys doing it and things like that, but people were on time. And then he talked about how his touches went down. Now, he said he went from 80 to 40. It was kind of like from 70 to 60 or 60 to 50, something like that. It was not as drastic as he made it sound, but it was still a very sharp decline. He said that when he approached Boylen about it, his response to him was, we'll focus on grabbing rebounds and keying the fast break. Now, if you've been listening, and I know you have, I appreciate that. I've been ragging on Lowry for not getting enough boards as it is. Like, that was my big complaint with him, is not doing enough when you're not shooting the ball well. Because to me, he was just not shooting. Now, he's saying that he wasn't being asked to shoot. Now, if you're the second best player at worst on this team, you're supposed to be taking them shots. I'm sorry. I don't care about them drawing up. If you got to look, you take the shot. He often seemed to force himself into bad looks and kind of looked awkward as a stand-up shooter. That's just not his game. So I get what he's saying in that regard. The design plays weren't for him. They weren't good, but he didn't take any other extra opportunities either upon himself. He didn't take it upon himself to create extra opportunities. So that is probably where more accurate of where things went awry. Now, I will say that while Boylen's method and probably the response to Lowry, which was reminiscent of Zach LaVine. When Boylen criticized his defense, he pulled him in the beginning of that game, and then Zach responded the next game with 49. Now, I could see that emboldening Jim Boylen and some of his backers, but in reality, I think what happened there is kind of just a player lashing out and kind of showing up his coach after showing up himself. That's what that was when you pull him like that. I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to demand more effort from Zach in that situation, in that game. I don't think it's wrong to want Lowry to pull down more boards, but I do think that you have to go about it in the right way. These are grown men, right? Like, I get it, they're young guys, and I talked with Brian Oringer about this, and they were a team that didn't know how to win, so he kind of taught them some fundamentals, but the message has to be right, otherwise it's going to fall on deaf ears. Their relationship as him and the head coach, because he's been around since 2015, but the relationship with him started off rocky and just kind of maintained that kind of feel throughout, because he just never seemed to grasp the on-the-court stuff and the off-the-court fundamentals that he was, I think, brought in to teach them. While the goal was right, the method to get there was just way off and very abrasive and apparently off-putting. It's a players' league now, so you kind of do have to cater to them. I don't think you have to acquiesce completely, but you got to do more than Boylen was doing, and you got to be able to adapt to what you have. And he was just doing a lot of experimenting on the floor and being too rigid off the floor, and it just didn't seem to work. And when you change up the style that you have with Lowry and it's not working, and you see he and Zach break out for that, I can't remember for the life of me the game it was, but they broke out for a little two-man exhibition there for a stint, and it really looked great. But then they went back to the old offense, and it just put Lowry back in the spot of being a spot-up three-point shooter. You got Wendell Carter, who's pleading to be a four. I haven't seen a shot from him to suggest that he should be a four in today's NBA, so that's a no from me, dog. But I don't like him at the five either. He's the most consistent bull. Me and Wendell, well, really it's me and myself, because Wendell doesn't know about this. But there's kind of this love-hate relationship, right? Because he's the most consistent bull on the roster. You know what you get from him. Usually a double-double. And he might not be dominant in the paint defensively, but he's going to be in the right spot more times than not. And he's not going to let his man beat him with some fancy forward. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's a smart player. He's undersized, so that's going to always be an issue. And the lack of offense that we've seen so far is concerning. It's almost like Lowry. You can say that they haven't drawn up any plays. They haven't asked him to do any of these extra things within the offense. But at some point, I think part of what Boylen might have wanted to see from these guys before you start doing that, what any coach is going to want to see, is them maybe asserting themselves a little bit more on a team like this where those roles are open. right? It's not like this is a team with veterans on. This is a team where these guys are expected to be the contributors. So they kind of have to do it on themselves, especially when your guards are gonna take their shots. Your guards aren't looking to get you the ball. So if you get the ball, I know the team wants to be passing and ball movement oriented, but if your guards aren't going to start it like that, when you do get the ball as a big man, you better make sure if you're in a position to score. And if Wendell's got the range to pull up a three or even a deep midi, go for it. I know they didn't call for it, so the midi's probably out of the question with the old regime. We'll see what the new guys let him do. But if he had this consistent corner three at least range, he should have been pulling them. So defensively, when they had him blitzing ball screens, that was a bad look. They weren't helping him at all. I still think he'll get bullied, but if you don't have him running up on everybody and having to drop back and retreat every time he's getting attacked off the dribble, maybe it'll look a little bit better. He's never going to be a great rim protector, but again, he's going to be in the right position more times than not. But Lowry talking about the touches is it just highlighted that issue with Boylen. You know, you could talk about Lowry not being aggressive enough, and I still don't know how he fits when this roster is humming. When everybody's going and when you get Kobe in the lineup and things like that, if it's the best fit. Now, they'll make it work because they're really talented players if they get the right coaches. But it does beg the question of what is his actual ceiling, because if you're having these, remember it just was out not too long ago that he was thinking about demanding a trade if the direction didn't change. Well, they've changed everything, and the only thing standing in his way is the reason for his friction. So you would imagine that Boylen's gone. Reports are that the decision on him has been made. They're just trying to figure out what's going to happen with the season before they do anything about it. So it's a twofold thing. I do blame Lowry in a large part for not being more assertive in his third year. He should be able to go out there and do what needs to be done to make sure that he's getting the touches that he needs, if that's what he feels like he's lacking right now. He didn't do that, so I'm not gonna sit here and completely put the blame on Boylen. But I will say Boylen didn't do a good job of communicating with his players, and he doesn't do a good job of effectively demonstrating the purpose of what he was having them do. And I'm not sure he really displayed an effective method of instilling those values that he was trying to instill. So that's aside from the coach speak stuff and the poor rotations and those kind of things. I think that there was a communication issue between what he thought he was getting across and what it came across as to a lot of these players. So I just told you that was a piece I did for Pippen Ain't Easy. Coming up, I think I'm gonna have to do this one, and I'm workshopping it a little bit still, but it's one that bothered me. So after The Last Dance, you know, a lot of people's feelings were hurt. I'm gonna call it like I see it. And they were talking about stuff that was left out, and one of them was Rachel Nichols, and she tweeted, "How come people don't talk about Michael Jordan's Wizards years?" Now, first of all, the doc was supposed to be about the Bulls, and it ended up being heavily about Jordan, but I'm not sure that you could have done that, the first part, without it being the second part. So that's that. Asking about the Wizards stuff is really just asking, why didn't they talk about the subject that I want to talk about, which is not exclusive to her. That was a thing that was going on throughout the actual documentary. Now, there was a lot of things that were valid. Mike double talking about saying he didn't want Isaiah on or didn't keep him off the roster, which technically he didn't, because he just said he wouldn't play, but that's effectively saying you better not play him. You never better not bring him. But it wasn't just Mike, whatever. There's a lot of stuff, right, that you could complain about. Talking about the Wizard years is funny to me. Again, it wasn't in that time frame, so that's irrelevant. It should be irrelevant there. But was it really as bad as people want to make it seem? So what I've been going into is the not only Michael Jordan on the floor, which at his age was doing incredible things, but really Michael Jordan, the executive, and that's the one that's been getting the most flack for, quote-unquote, destroying the Wizards franchise or setting them back for many years. Now, I highly disagree with that off just off recollection. Going back and looking through the archives, man, whoo, it's not looking good for all y'all that's been trying to dog Mike in the Wizards years. Let me just tell you that flat out, up and down. Now, there are going to be some points that I have to concede, but nah, fam. Y'all shenanigans. I'm calling shenanigans, right? So be on the lookout for that one coming out on Pippen Ain't Easy, or maybe it comes out on Cloud, depending on how things work out. But it will be coming out. Be on the lookout for that one on the handles. MJ's Wizard years. We're gonna do a little bit of myth busting on that one, because it's just I'm calling shenanigans, man. There's some hatred going on outside, and I just don't understand what y'all are made from. Because like I said during the documentary, you either went into it and you felt good, so you came out feeling good, or you went into it indifferent or worse, and you came out feeling the exact same or worse. There's no in between. Didn't change anybody's mind about it, but you definitely came out feeling a certain type of way, and it exposed a lot of people. And this is the one that I had to push back on the hardest, just because the revisionist history on this is incredible. And I know we dog Mike the executive now, but boy, listen. Just be on the lookout for that. Myth busting the MJ Wizard years. Gonna take a quick break. When I come back, we're gonna switch gears and talk about some NFL news. Don't go anywhere. Triple Zeros. Triple Zeros, and I am Josh Buckhalter. I always try to come back with that. I am Josh Buckhalter. The Twitter handle is Joshy Buck. Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Website, clockersports.com. Email address, clockersports@gmail.com. Now, switching over to the NFL, and man, really the only update that you have over there is that they're planning on proceeding as normal. Nothing has stopped them yet. We'll see what they're doing about fans and stuff like that, but they are trying to get games. They are going forward as if nothing is going to be different from them. We'll see. That's about as big of an update as I have on that, because again, it's so tender. Like I just said, the NBA is much further along in discussions to return to play, and they are not even close really to having anything figured out. So you just know the NFL is way behind, just because they're not prepared for this. They kind of got cut off in the middle of a lot of stuff. So we'll see how soon they can come to a resolution on that. But I would imagine you'll get a much stronger push from the NFL to return. Obviously, it'll be later on than the NBA anyway. But from the top down, I think you'll get a much stronger push from them to return than you would from the NBA anyway. On the fields, though, or player news, Jadeveon Clowney reportedly turned down a substantial offer from the Cleveland Browns. Wow. So the Browns have been winning the offseason for the past 2 years, really. But this year in particular, they brought in tight end Austin Hooper from the Atlanta Falcons. They retained Kareem Hunt. Still have Nick Chubb. Baker Mayfield's still there. And then you just wonder, though. This is like the Dream Team. Remember the Dream Team Eagles? What was it, 2011? Vince Young and Nnamdi Asomugha, and they had all that star power and didn't win diddly. I feel like that's what's happening here in Cleveland. And to have Clowney, a player who played in 13 games last year and recorded a total of 3 sacks last season, right? Turned down the only substantial offer that he's gotten. He's recovering from core surgery, and people do believe that once teams feel that he's healthier, that he will get more offers. But that's not a good look. Now, again, Cleveland has done a lot to turn around that roster. And I think the direction is positive, but there are some uncertainties there. So I could see him not wanting to go and sign with a team that may not make the playoffs, because they haven't. So it's not like it's not like he's saying anything out of pocket. And there's still a lot of turmoil there, because you don't know what's going to happen with OBJ. Jarvis Landry, still just saying, it's not certain what happens with any of those guys there, despite having the new head coach and Kevin Stefanski. So that's one to keep an eye on. There are rumors that he could return to Seattle, but he's going to look for a contender, and that just shows you how far he thinks that the Browns are. And I honestly, again, despite what we've seen with the turnover and what they've done to improve their roster this offseason, I'm just not sure we could say that it's the Browns, right? Point blank period. Another player news, DeAndre Hopkins. That's been a lot of wide receivers talking this offseason, and it's really just been a chain. Devontae Parker apparently came after Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas went back at Devontae Parker. Since then, DeAndre Hopkins has now spoke out and said, I know I'm the best. I know I'm the best. The quote continues on to say that Mike's my boy. We were just talking yesterday, but he knows if I had Drew Brees my whole career, what these numbers would be, Hopkins said. Julio Jones knows if I had Matt Ryan my whole career, he knows what my numbers would be. Those guys are definitely whole career. They had a Pro Bowl quarterback. Now, some people try to take that as a slight towards Deshaun Watson, but clearly he said their whole career with the Pro Bowl quarterback. And they try to say, well, the last year he was better than he was worse than Michael Thomas and Julio Jones. Now, Julio Jones has got studly numbers. DeAndre Hopkins is my pick for the number 1 receiver in the NFL. It's been because of the things that he kind of said. Not a shot at Deshaun Watson at all, but the guys preceding him, hell yeah, they were trash. Like, not good. So for him to say what he's saying is not inaccurate. And then if you want to get technical, Deshaun Watson is not a bum. He's not a scrub. He's a very, very good quarterback, and he will be a multiple Pro Bowl, All-Pro, possible MVP in this league. Hopefully a Super Bowl champion. Hopefully for MVP too, but you know what I'm saying. But his on-target throws, 16%. Drew Brees, and Teddy Bridgewater, both. Because remember, Brees missed those 5 games. 11% or around 11% or fewer, or lower than that. I believe Bridgewater was at 11 and Brees was at 10. So, like, the targets aren't the same, right? Now, Hopkins, the advanced metrics this year favored Michael Thomas heavily. DVOA, DYAR, both of those from Football Outsiders, both of those favored Thomas. But last year, Hopkins was on top. So it was a down year. And also, you got to think about distribution of the targets. It's a much more concentrated attack in New Orleans. And I know we think of only Hopkins when we talk about pass catchers in Houston, but Watson does a really good job of spreading the ball around, despite having a lot of the other guys be in and out of the lineup due to injury. So I'm going to stick with my pick for Hopkins being the best. Statistically speaking, though, he is third guy, at least from this last year, on the list. Now, he said his whole career, and he definitely wasn't talking about playing with Deshaun Watson when he was comparing them to not having the Pro Bowl quarterback, because he clearly has one. But so when you go before that, look, he was putting up numbers with trash juice, right? Trash juice. Tom Savage, fam. So put some respect on my boy Nuke's name, and you're supposed to believe you're the best. So that's just all. It's just been a lot of wide receiver talk. Interesting. Love it. They're bored. Bring back the chirping wide receivers. We need that back in the NFL. The Julio Jones is a great guy, but he is very quiet, very reserved, and he's still a freak of nature. I had somebody ask me earlier what my issue with Julio is. Big drops in some key moments. I can't really say that I have an issue with Julio as much as I like DeAndre Hopkins. That's what the thing is. When you get to this point, I don't think there really is a wrong answer for the best receiver in the NFL. I think it's kind of a matter of what you prefer. The thoroughbred is Julio Jones, right? The hands guy. I don't know how to quantify the difference between, because I would consider Hopkins the Mr. Come Through. Like, you know, you just know you can count on him when you really, really need it the most. Michael Thomas is probably the shiftiest of them all, because he's a big slot guy, you know what I mean? Makes a lot of stuff happen after the catch. So I would maybe go for him for the shiftiness, but Hopkins is the guy that I know if I need it, I'm going to be throwing. Like, there could be 3-4 guys and he's going to come down with it. That's just the way I've seen it for forever, and that's what it is. So, like, again, I can't say there's a wrong answer, but I will argue till I'm blue in the face that Hopkins is the best receiver in the NFL. That's just what it is. Now, speaking of the best receivers in the NFL and DeAndre Hopkins, his new team, the Arizona Cardinals, made the Clocker Sports list, my Clocker Sports list of best off seasons in the NFL. And the other two teams, I'll give you one of them, was the Denver Broncos. I won't tell you who the third team on the list is. Now, I will tell you that Arizona was number one for getting DeAndre Hopkins, because they also got one of the freakiest athletes in the NFL draft in Isaiah Simmons. He's going to play linebacker, but that dude can line up everywhere. I did knock them for not picking up more offensive line help, but they did just about everything else. And so, again, when you pick up who I think is the best receiver in the NFL, that goes a long way when you're trying to when you're trying to groom your young quarterback. And I think that we're gonna see him enjoy a lot of what we saw Watson enjoy. And I feel bad for Watson, but I think the way that he plays, like I said, he spreads the ball out. He doesn't need a target like DeAndre Hopkins, in my opinion. Kyler Murray could use one at this point in his career, especially being at his stature. He needs a target that he can kind of know he can get it to, and they're going to come down with it. So it makes sense schematically. I don't agree with the deal for Houston, but at this stage, I could definitely see saying that Kyler Murray needs DeAndre Hopkins more than Deshaun Watson does. That makes a lot of sense. So, that was my number one team. Denver did make the list because my boy Drew Lock got a lot of help with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler coming in. That's a big thing to keep an eye on. And also, I liked what they did with their defense. They lost a couple of guys, but they brought in a couple of guys, and they brought in... Now, Chris Harris is a big loss. A.J. Boyer is not as good as Chris Harris. A.J. Boyer, though, is a better fit for Vic Fangio's defense. And if they finally get some games out of Bryce Callahan, look out, because then they'll already have their nickelback locked up. It won't even matter. So that's that one. Check out clockersports.com to see the third team to make that list. And finally, the Bears rumors piece for Last Word on Pro Football that came out today. Recently, back in April, you had talk about Aaron Rodgers playing elsewhere. Michael Wilbon said he sees Aaron Rodgers coming to the Bears. And you had Eric Lambert of Last Word on Pro... Eric Lambert of Sports Mockery talking about J.J. Watt possibly coming to Chicago. Now, in the article, I talk about how one of the moves is much more likely than the other one. That would be J.J. Watt coming to Chicago because of the ties he has to the area. His contract's set to expire. He doesn't anticipate there being any type of new deal offered to him. Now, there could be a one-year incentive-laden deal offered when all is said and done, but he went on television and said he doesn't anticipate one at this point in time. Rodgers is still locked up for another 4 years. They won't move him for another 2 years at best, and they're not trading him to a division rival. And I wrote that in the article how it took Brett Favre a gap year going to the Jets and to finagle his way back to the Minnesota Vikings just to quote-unquote exact his revenge against the Green Bay Packers. So it would be a circuitous event if it was to occur for Rodgers to end up on the Bears, but it's definitely something that a lot of people have pointed to. It wasn't just Mike Wilbon. Bucky Brooks also said that he could see it as soon as next year. I'm not sure how he figured that. The Packers and that money, it's like $51 million. They're not going to eat all that. I just don't. That team is small market. Now, I will say, Love's contract being what it is allows them the flexibility to do so if they so choose. But I just can't see any franchise willingly deciding to eat $50+ million, especially a quarterback who, despite all the hate he got, is still playing at a very high level. 25+ touchdowns for the fifth time in 6 healthy seasons that he had. In his last 6 healthy seasons, he had a couple of injury-plagued ones when he broke his collarbone. He hasn't thrown an interception since 2000, or double-digit interceptions in a season since 2010. Like, the man's skill level is still very, very high. So the bigger get, and I say this in the art of playing this day, you much rather lay in an aging air. This is just positional, but like also value of what they bring in you positional value. You're going to want an aging Aaron Rodgers more than you're going to want an aging J.J. Watt, who has had much more trouble staying on the field. He's had 1 healthy season in the past 4, but when he's healthy, he's just as dominant as Rodgers is on the field. Had 16 sacks in his last 16-game season. He's 4th out of 5 healthy seasons. Now, he's missed a lot of 4, so he's missed chunks of 4. But of his 5 healthy seasons, 4 of those seasons, he had 10.5 sacks or better. Like, he's still a stud when he's healthy. But is he going to be healthy? How much is he going to cost? Because it ain't going to be cheap regardless. And he'll be afraid, so you have to fend off some suitors for him. So that's just a couple of the possible hang-ups for both of these guys. Again, Watt's probably more likely. Rodgers is the bigger get. Do I see either one of them happening, though? Nah, not really. By the time Rodgers could get here, he'd be damn near 40. He's 36 now. You're not going to want to do that. I mean, the Bears were linked to Tom Brady at this point. Who knows? Anything's possible, right? I just don't see it happen. I think it'd be too much to go around. But history has a way of repeating itself, so we could see both Packers quarterbacks try to come back and exact their pound of flesh for the perceived slights from their organization. I'd love it. Listen, I'm not even gonna lie to you. If things don't work out for the Braves in the next few years, why not? Right? They were this close to going to getting Tom Brady, or tour. Not this close, because they weren't close at all. But they were in a situation where they needed Tom Brady. If they find themselves in a similar situation in a couple years when Aaron Rodgers is available, why the hell not? I don't know at this point. The Wild one I'm a little bit less excited on, but I wouldn't be upset at that either. I just don't see how, it's kind of overkill. He's an older player, down in health, like I said, but you're gonna end up paying him and then he's gonna get hurt. That's the feeling that I have at that situation. But again, that one came out on Last Word on Pro Football. Please though, be sure to check out all the articles. Last Word on Pro Football, Pippin Ain't Easy, and clockersports.com. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Check me out on Twitter, again, Josh E. Buck, Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Until the very next time, you already know what it is, man. I'm gone.